Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Remote Workforce Summit 2021. That was indeed a very invigorating start to the RWS 2021 organized by Khaleej Times. Now, quickly moving to the next session. The next session, we want to talk about the future of digital workplace. This session is going to be held by Nutanix. The pandemic has shifted priorities for enterprises, especially for their IT teams. Is your organization enabled to work from anywhere? Remote working has been a complex necessity for organizations, but the technology behind it can be simplified. In this presentation, join us to discuss the leading technologies behind shaping a digital workplace and the best practices to ensure you're ready for the new normal. For this particular presentation, I would like to call Mr. Kabul Shah, the Senior Global Executive Marketing from Nutanix, Mr. John Eli Araman, the Senior Systems Engineer from Nutanix. Over to you, John and Kabul. I hope you have a very good session.
Mitsu, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to join forces with Khaleej Times on this important subject. So appreciate you allowing us to be part of this. Great. Okay. Welcome, everybody. You can see my screen, Mitsu?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Great. Thank you. So thank you for joining us. We wanted to share some insights, some research we've been doing with our customers, prospects, and some analyst community members, and just talk really around what we're seeing in terms of the future digital workspace at Nutanix. So to kick it off, I thought I'd start with just introducing who Nutanix are for those that don't know who we are. So Nutanix was born in 2009 with a simple mission. Our mission was to simplify IT. And the way we did that was to take storage, networking, and compute, collapse that down into a platform called hyperconverged infrastructure, which then became a category within its own right. Within the last 3 years, moving on from that data center modernization, we focused on delivering any application, any workload to any device in an environment of your choosing, whether that's public cloud, private cloud, multi-cloud. And we've been doing that for the last few years. And as you can see, some of the stats above you, we're an organization with over 18,000 customers around the globe, nearly 50% of the G2K, and something that's very dear and important for us is our NPS score of 90 plus. And finally, we've got endorsements from Gartner, Forrester, and IDC, which you can look at anytime you wish to. So moving on to why we're here today and the future of remote working or the future of the workplace, I wanted to talk through some research we've been doing with IDC. We've been working on this for sort of 3 to 5 months. It's hard to build it all over in 3 slides, but I've tried to capture the essence of what the research is telling us, and we'd be happy to do a deep dive if any of you wish to do a one-to-one later after this session. So when you look at the building of the workplace of the future, we have to understand where we've come from, kind of where are organizations today, and then where are they going to be? So we all know the horrific pandemic that has hit us, right? The COVID crisis. If you look at the economic situation in the green text, COVID crisis to an economic slowdown, to recession, return to growth, and now what the analysts are calling the next normal. What did that mean from a technology perspective to people deploying technology? It meant business continuity. It meant return on investment focus. It meant business resilience, moving to targeted investments, and then what I like to call kind of the future agile enterprise. So taking it all the way back to stage 1, it was around employee safety. Where are our employees? Are they in hotspots where the COVID situation is bad? How do we get them out of there? What is the crisis communication of the executives coming together? Moving to stage 2, you saw a lot of furloughs, salary cuts, and people really consolidating expenses and ensuring that the workforce that they have were enabled to be driving productivity. Stage 3 was around profitability, and we haven't seen a lot of the full scale of M&A, but I'm sure we'll see a lot more of that as the economy recovers. But again, it continued with cost reduction and productivity. So how do we make sure that workforce we have are now empowered and able to work from home? So you saw a lot of VDI investment in existing infrastructure, scaling that up, or you saw people at that inflection point moving to DaaS and desktop as a service to provide that work from home environment. Stage 4, what I call is human-machine collaboration. So people started looking at targeted investments around AI, machine learning, and RPA, robotic process automation. How can we get tasks that our workers can no longer go in and do in the office? How can we get those outsourced and build those through machines? And then the final part was around this sustainability and this future enterprise. Right, so people really thinking about the bottom line, obsessing over the bottom line and profitability, but also the employee experience. How do we stand out as an organization to employ the talent coming from the future? So if you look at it and the way IDC have built this 5 stages to recovery, different organizations fit in different stages of recovery. And that's also due to the geographic regions they're based in, right? Different countries have evolved differently from this horrible pandemic we've had to go through. But before the pandemic, there was still other environmental factors that were happening, or different trends in the market that were already pushing to this hybrid remote workforce, or the workforce of the future. You saw a changing demographic, growing 58% of millennials and Gen Z want to work flexibly, right? And that's the talent pool that everyone is going after. They want to have a different working environment to the one that we had. The gig economy is growing 3 times faster than traditional workforce. The reason that this is important, people think gig economy, they think it's about the self-independent worker connected to the internet, but it's more than that. It gives employers and companies the ability to hire people at scale, and geography is no longer a boundary, right? So you're getting the best talent wherever it is in the world, and all you need is connectivity and a smartphone in some situations. The permanent remote work, so 74% of CFOs have talked about, even after the pandemic, they still want to continue having a work from home environment. And there's reasons for that coming out of expensive costs in real estate, and employees being able to work from home with the flexibility that they desire. And it's something that's also making the bottom line look good. In the US, a recent study came out that 600 billion was saved just on commuting, right, worldwide. So these factors have been in place. The other piece I touched upon before on the previous slide is workforce automation. So IDC say that 45% of tasks will be augmented or automated by AI, RPA, and that real human-machine collaboration. So you can already see that having to go into the office or go into the warehouse or deliveries, that the mechanisms are changing, and new technologies we thought were so far away are much closer than we think. And then overall, the piece that I really think about, and speaking to HR leaders and IT leaders around the world, is the employee experience. They're at the core of this shift, right? So more than half of the G2K organizations will be really focused on the employee experience and how employees decide where to work. And some of the anecdotal feedback we've had is doctors, such as in the NHS, junior doctors moving to senior consultants, they base their decision on where to work on technology. It plays a huge part. Are they able to do remote diagnosis? Are they able to digitally prescribe prescriptions, right? Rather than having to fill out paperwork and having to go into the office and all these things that they've been tasked to do before. Similarly, with lecturers having to stay on campus to mark work, right, through an intranet, they should be able to do that securely and confirm their identity wherever they are in the world. So these are the shifts and the changes that are happening outside of the COVID pandemic, which only accelerated the work from home movement that was already there. So I touched upon the research. I've shown you a little bit around the 5 stages and some of the macro environment things that are happening. But what did the research tell us in terms of what leaders can do today to really take hold and lead in this situation? And it's not so much just the technology leader. And I think in the opening statement by the Khaleej Times, it talked about different business units and lines of businesses coming together. So the chief information officer, the chief human resources officer or head of personnel, the CISO and the chief financial officer have to come together to create what IDC are terming, and a term used in the industry, of building a digital culture. Right, so the CFO and CIO working, collaborating together to say, okay, we're not going to be spending so much on physical real estate. How do we reinvest that to allow our CIOs to really modernize our core business applications? How does the CIO and the chief human officer work together, HR officer work together to create a workspace that's really different and allows health, empathy, trust, and empowerment, because that's what employees and the top talent worldwide are looking for. And then how do they work together with the CISO to allow authentication anywhere? How do they work with them to do scenario modeling to understand what are the dangers coming next? How can we be better prepared for the next crisis or situation that hits us as a workforce? So these are some of the parameters. There's a lot more in-depth research. And again, like I said, we'd be more than willing to sit down and share this with you on a one-to-one basis. But again, just streamlining some of the content that's come out. What are the recommendations that IDC and ourselves and some of the white papers we've done really point to? There's 4 key areas. It's keep employee experience at the core of your workforce transformation, right? Employee experience is everything. And if employees aren't having that experience we talked about with the examples with the doctors and the lecturers, they'll move to other organizations. And it's really about keeping top talent at your organization. We talked about collaboration and a digital culture that really has to be done top down by those leaders, the CISO, this CFO, and the CHRO. You even see now, and I don't know if this was before the pandemic, but you're seeing a lot of CFOs of IT. So people who understand technology, but they also act like a financial custodian. So they're playing both parts to ensure the investments that are being made are of the right level and right ROI. You have to build a roadmap for your digital workers. So how much of your digital workforce will be powered or augmented by AI or machine learning, and how much of it will remain to upskill your talent pool? And then the final thing is a real agreement around the KPIs between your CIO, CISO, CFO, and CHRO. There has to be established KPIs, and the workforce of the future or the workplace of the future has to have something around it which is built on OKRs and KPIs. Otherwise, it's something that just dies if not everyone is pushing to the same goals and targets around that collaboration. So I'd left a quote in here from the group HR leader for Unilever, and they talk about the digital revolution as a human revolution. Ultimately, it's people who will bring it to life, and the HR leaders will play a pivotal role in the new future of work, and it has to be one that's built on inclusivity and purposefulness. So this is something no longer just technology, it's a collaborative effort, and it's something that we're seeing happen more and more by these teams coming together, brought together by the crisis, but continuing to work together to shape the future of the workforce. So with that, I'm gonna pass over and ask some questions to our technology leader in this region around some of the things we've talked about just there. So we've talked about the 5 stages of recovery. So John, as our technology leader for end user computing in this region, can you tell us a little bit around that first stage and the crisis, and how was it working with our customers and helping them during that very tense, difficult period?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kabir. I just wanted to touch upon one point you made that's very near and dear to my heart when it comes to end user computing. You mentioned user experience. And that's the first thing I tell every customer, every organization that I sit down with when we talk about end user computing. I tell them what makes or breaks a solution is not just the technology that we have, it's also, and more importantly, the user experience. Regardless if you have the best performing platform, the best software, the latest and greatest hardware, if the users are not happy with their experience, or you as the organization haven't set the right expectations, typically we consider that as a failed deployment. So going back to your question. So the way I saw it was, I look at it in terms of existing Nutanix clusters and Nutanix customers, and customers who did not have Nutanix as a technology. So with our existing Nutanix customers, those who had VDI running, what I saw happened was they rushed around looking how to offload some of their workloads. So some of the workloads that weren't so necessary or that they deemed not non-critical, such as, for example, test and dev. What they did then was take those offline and expanded their existing VDI workloads. Because typically what I've seen, especially in the region, most VDI deployments don't cater to 100% of the workloads, 100% of the users. So let's say you have an organization with 1,000 users, maybe they'd have 200, 250 of those with remote work capabilities. So during the pandemic, they had to scale out really fast and really quickly. So for those who had VDI, it was a matter of just clicking in their environment, add a few more desktops or whatever was necessary, and at the same time, they had to decommission some workloads. Now, for those customers who had a VDI program, they were planning on deploying VDI, but it was always on the back burner. They had to reshift their priorities. So what happened then was, again, they looked at what they had, what are the existing workloads that didn't need priority, weren't mission critical, took those offline and implemented VDI remotely. So one of the key things that I love about our technology is our speed to deployment. And as you have on your slide, it says 8 times faster to roll out. I can talk of many, many examples where I've walked into a customer where a typical VDI solution would take, at best case, maybe 3-4 days or a week to get it up and running. I've managed to walk in the morning, leave in the afternoon with a working VDI solution, albeit we haven't done all the lockdowns, the securing, all the group policies and whatnot. However, we have a working, fully fault tolerant solution that's up and running in 1 day.
Wow.
That was that really helped our customers to get up and running during the pandemic.
Awesome.
Now, on the flip side, some customers who didn't have, let's say, a Nutanix cluster in their environment. So what we were able to help those customers with was our desktop as a service offering. Our solution is it's called XiFrame. It's a desktop as a service. So it's basically VDI. It's like an oversimplified VDI, but you're not managing the infrastructure. So we as Nutanix, we own the infrastructure. So we take care of upgrades. We take care of making sure that it's secure, it's locked down. All you have to manage are the desktops and what applications you're running.
Wow.
And to make that even better, you as an organization, as a customer, you have the option to select whatever cloud you like to use, whether it be Amazon, Google, Azure. You even have the option to run it on-prem on a Nutanix cluster. So we are truly giving the customers a true flexibility and choose your own infrastructure and choose your own desktops.
Sure. I think, John, I think you've touched on a few things, like in the middle of a crisis, how can you spin up an environment where your team can work from home, right? And VDI and DAS solve some of those issues. I think moving away from that scenario and talking a little bit about experience, and you talked about user experience being critical. So people who haven't experienced VDI or DAS, how does that feel? Does it feel different? Because we've been spoilt by, our Apple phone and our access to data and the ability to use our phones to do so much in the consumer world. How does our technology allow you to have that same kind of experience, or are you seeing that request come from our customers?
I mean, you said it. We've been spoiled. I mean, we expect to have our data at any time. We want to make sure that we have our phones. We should be able to connect from anywhere. So the beauty with VDI or desktop as a service is we are actually empowering the end users. So historically, what used to happen when we used to go deploy VDI, the focus was on getting the infrastructure up and running. The focus was on getting the solution implemented. And what happened then is we lost sight of what was really important, which is the end user experience. So with the simplification of how we oversimplified things with Nutanix, we make sure that we can focus on what's important, which is the end user experience. We make sure that the performance is there. They get the same experiences that they would expect, whether they're sitting in the office or sitting at a beach, with having fun.
Yeah. Okay. And I think we talked about some observations, and I think we're coming up to time. That's probably what I'm getting messaged. But
yes, we are.
If you were to talk about, being in the UAE and in the region here, is there any differences from the worldwide research we showed on the screen to some of the things you're seeing here? Are you seeing more kind of HR leaders involved in these conversations? Is it still at the technical level? Are you seeing any of that? any differences here in the local region or any similarities?
Local region. I mean, what I've actually seen was typically this region was more, they would focus more on having people in the office, and with the push to go VDI, everyone has rushed to go to there's a big shift today, considering a couple of years ago, even just for a quick kickoff meeting, they would want you to be in the office, and now they're actually accepting the work from home concept, and they're running and they're going full force to adopt it.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. John, thank you so much for your insights. And I hope everyone enjoyed the short but sharp presentation. And I hope we can share some more of the research findings, John and I, at a later date. So Mitsu, back over to you.
Thank you, Kawal, and thank you, John. We do have some interesting questions that have come up for you. I will be sending these questions to you, and I hope you can respond to them, and then we'll put them on the platform.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kawal. Thank you, John. Pleasure having you both here. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.